Hey y'all, this is Paula with Other Realm Studio, and tonight I will be drawing more creatures from the world of Soulbound, my upcoming comic that I will be releasing issue 1 very soon, as soon as I pick a good day to go live with the Kickstarter for the print run. Alright, so I have a couple of different creatures that I was thinking of drawing tonight. And I've had an equal number of votes for the Arachne and for the Basilisks. I need a tiebreaker. All right, we got to vote for Arachne. Hey Dave, how you doing? Okay, let's clear off this layer. And get started. Okay, so the thing with these is that they're very small, but there's millions of them. Come on. So it's a bit different than the way, say, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter did the whole arachnid creature. Okay. We'll come around here. And lay out the basic structure. Let's see. They are a little tricky because it's a lot of arms. So they do take a lot of layout. And I'll figure out exactly where to place this. Okay, so these come into play. There's a forest that most people prefer to just go around rather than pay the toll to get through. And I actually had on Twitter like a little short a phrase on one of the Sat Splat challenges a while back. There's a writers group on Twitter that has challenges where there's a topic and different writers go with post little excerpts of their work, or it's just a little writing prompt thing. And so I had posted one about the arachne. That was part of a scene that I had. In the book where Torrin says that they don't really have, you know, he doesn't like to throw live animals in, and he doesn't think they have time to gather enough crickets to pay the toll to get through. So that'll give you an idea. It's kind of a creepy thing to have to get through. Let's see, this, I need to leave that in, so I'm going to do this in a different color so that I don't forget where it goes. This is another one of those instances where having a grid is really useful. Okay, and I just need to remember that that's where a shoulder is. So, let's see, I need to figure out where all the points of contact are. This, I'm going to have to keep in mind for each of these arms, they all need to be doing something. So this is going to take a lot more planning than, say, something like the healer's horse, which I did yesterday. So, you know, every arm you have some gesture to deal with, and there's 8 of them. So it is going to be a little tricky. Let's see. So the upper arm is going to be pretty much straight out from the shoulder. And then the forearm is going to be tapered. So after I get the gesture down, then I'll be able to work on the more finished thing. And I don't think I'm going to go into detail on the hands until okay, let's bring this up so it'll grip something a little higher. Because she's got all this weight up here. And this can go down behind here. And then what's really going to kill me is the webbing. I didn't really study a lot about arachnid biology, but I have observed many spiders out here. So there's all kinds. So I pretty much my my knowledge is kind of basic of actual spiders. So here, I mean, I know it's not supposed to have 3 sections like an insect. Spiders generally have 2. But given that this is a mythical creature, then I think I can fudge just a little bit of some of the details. You know, it's sort of the idea of a centaur, but with spiders. Like, honestly, how would centaurs even work? Okay, so it's about time to put on my upper layer. Yeah, I'm really not fond of spiders at all, but at the same time, they're fascinating. Let's see. A good color here. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'd really love to get into like D&D, but you know, I kind of need more people. I don't know. I think we can get the kids. Let's see, I've spawned 2 children and I have a husband. I'm trying to raise them all right. So, I don't know, maybe we can get into Dungeons and Dragons. Miss Chaos is at a point where she can follow instructions and rules all right. Mostly. Mostly what I remember about Dungeons and Dragons was there was a cartoon. And I wasn't sure that it was a real thing for a while. You know, every now and then you have these memories of stuff that you used to love as a kid, and then you realize it never existed. Got the Mandela effect going on. But I'm not the only one who's ever seen the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, so now I want to find it somewhere and watch it and see if it's held up any. Okay, that's gonna be the easy part. Oh yeah. See, I'm not crazy. It did exist. I liked it. I liked it mostly because there was a little unicorn in it. It sounded like a little goat. But I also liked the guy who was a knight. And, you know, even though he wasn't a very brave knight, he was in there and he was trying. Yeah. So the idea behind the arachne here, which I still haven't looked it up. I need to figure it out whether it's more correct to say arachne or arachnads. I don't really know much about Greek grammar. I might know some people I can consult about that. Okay, but is it like plural for like an entire civilization? Or would there be something else? So I do want to put something in this picture to show that there are a great many of these. There's not just one. Now, yeah, because the oh goodness, now I can't remember. Also, if I could remember, I would pronounce it completely wrong. The followers of... Oh goodness. I don't know. I don't want to get up and like check my mythology book. What is it? Hamilton's over there on the shelf. But I'm here to draw. I gotta look it up. So I'm going to put in a braided texture in the hair. And in the braids there's going to be kind of some extra eyes. But they also have a rather Greek hairstyle. And they also have a very blank, very innocent expression. Like they still have some humanity, but they are not entirely there. Yeah, I am not sure what was going on in my head when I came up with these, but they kind of turned into an important part of the story, and I can't just leave them out just because I find them personally creepy. There's just a lot going on in the world. I can't help it. So the first one was much more of a sketch, but I think these need a lot more detail. I mean, because for one, the healer's horse is pretty much just a silvery, almost bluish color, and these are some, they have some color. They're a little different. Yeah, the things I do for story. So yeah, this is going to get worse once I get hands on here. Yeah, I'm thinking that one of the worst things I have ever seen online, which, well, the bar gets raised every day, or lowered, depending, is somebody says it's now a trend to have acrylic nails that are little hands on the ends of your nails. Nope. Nope. That's not a trend. That's just somebody being stupid. I refuse to believe that's a trend. Oh, I saw it on Twitter. See, I swear, it's like nail artists are just trolling us all now. They just want to come up with something weirder than the last person who got internet famous. Yeah, it's disturbing. So, I don't know. I don't think that I want the hands to look too insect-like. I do want them to look very, very graceful and feminine. So, and also they'll be I need to have them like gripping the web. So I don't know. I might not go too much detail on the hands until I have the detail of the web in here. But yeah, they're kind of famous in the other realm for being not just creepy, but for having an entirely different idea of what's appropriate to do with like sentient creatures. Because they are naturally carnivorous, and you know, if you ask them nicely, they won't drink all your blood, but that's kind of what they're after. So you can either pay the toll by throwing a whole lot of crickets in there and get through, or you can throw something else in there. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah. I mean, I do want to smooth some of this out. I might turn this one into more of a painting than a sketch after all. Just because, you know, too many lines will make something look wrong. Or more wrong than it really ought to look. So let me zoom in on the face, and you know, you can see how cute their little faces are. And the idea is that Arachne, to begin with, was a woman in ancient times who was cursed to become a spider. And, well, these are her daughters, essentially. More or less. So they are excellent at weaving. They have a wonderful tradition of craftsmanship. But, you know, they just have really horrifying habits. They can't help it. Yeah, well, there wouldn't be very many males, and I wouldn't want to look too closely into what does happen to the males. Yeah, I'm not gonna like go too far into what their culture is. I imagine Becca and Torin are going to want to just get in and get out. They wouldn't really want to get in the first place, really. But there's an issue with another race of creatures, and I'm kind of concerned about how human they're going to be. So, if you know about crows, crows are very interesting. They're very intelligent. They remember people. They can establish a form of currency. They bear grudges. Oh, yeah. So there was, I read about a little girl in, I think, England, who, you know, made friends with crows. You know, she'd feed them every day, and then they'd start bringing her things. You know, sometimes they would bring, you know, little trinkets, a lot of hairbands, occasionally money, like dollar bills that they'd found. Probably thousands of bobby pins. And it's because they remembered this particular girl. And then there was another story that I read about a man who he'd either killed a crow or it looked like he had. And the crows had a grudge against him forever after that. And they'd flock over his house and fuss at him all day, every day. Even after he moved, It's like they told their children and their children's children that that's where that evil man lived. So, crows, they're interesting and also kind of scary. And I do have a debate that's come up between the Arachne and the crows. Not exactly a debate. More like an all-out war. Because the crows are not going to take to this whole idea of there being an entire forest full of creatures that will essentially eat them if they trespass. And crows are very territorial themselves. So there's going to be some conflict there. Let me see. I need a warmer shade of brown. Not sure if I should go all the way into a red shade of brown. Oh, let's take a look at it. That looks all right. So I'm trying to think which issue that is in the series. So they're not going to appear in issue 1. I mean, this is just, issue 1 is just getting there. It might be about the 5th issue. I haven't checked my outline recently. So I need to get a little smaller with this brush. And yeah, so these are very innocent and childlike looking, but Torin is rightfully creeped out by them, and yeah, he's survived a lot already. But I had this idea that in his culture, since they live, relatively close to this forest, there's a tradition of the children, just whenever they have a chance, they catch a cricket and throw it in case they ever do get lost near the woods, because the Arachne keep a credit. They know everyone who comes through, and they know how much they owe, or how much credit that they've built up over a lifetime of throwing in crickets. So that's one way they can live relatively peacefully with their neighbors, is just by really good bookkeeping. And they do honor their debts. Just the trick is not getting into debt with them. So if you don't start nothing, there won't be nothing. Yeah, the thing is, it will take a lot of crickets to get a credit, because they calculate how much you owe by how much they estimate that you weigh. Or how much they estimate that, how much blood they estimate that you would have. So if the idea that they have when you're passing through their forest is that everything that passes through there is their rightful prey, then you need to pay enough so that they can afford to let you go. So I'm going to brush in this. I want to make her spine look more human. And these are going to be very human looking arms. But possibly with the ability to bend a lot more. Yeah, although it would be a lot easier to like toss a deer in the forest, preferably alive, or something like that. Yeah, it's not a very well-known forest. There's not a lot of people other than Torrens people who live near it. It's on the borders of his land, and then the rest of that is pretty much unclaimed. So I think, you know, it's not going to be like a main trading route. Most people are just going to avoid it because it looks creepy, and you can tell from a mile away that the tops of the trees are full of spider webs. Oh yeah, and I think that the Arachne are smart enough to know, you know, which person is the one who really owes them. Because if somebody's not willing to come through the forest, then, you know, I think you have just as good of a chance as them turning on you if you try and bring somebody else to throw them in. And also, with them being a matriarchy, pretty much, they're not going to think that males would have a lot of say. I think they would be very suspicious. So if two people were coming in and one was male and one was female, then they would assume that the one that they were supposed to eat would be the male. They might ask just to be sure and to get their records straight. But according to their laws, the female would get treatment as more of a decision maker. So let's see. I think that the teeth will be just a little bit fangy, not too much. So, pretty subtle. And let's see. I'm just going to mark out where the hang on. Where was it? Right here. So about here it's going to look like jewels set into the hair, and really it's extra eyes. With the hair just braided around them. So I've been trying not to let the whole story get bogged down in just the histories of the civilizations of like 400 kinds of monsters. But it's kind of hard because I just love different civilizations and stuff, and legends and where they might have come from, and you know, not just that, but where they might go. I mean, what if there is a civilization of, like, what if the story of Arachne is mostly real? Or it's real somewhere in the universe. And what we know is a ghost of it or a dream of it. Oh, well, thanks for coming by. I appreciate you keeping me company. And I'll see you in the other realm then. Good night. So, I'm going to work on some of my shading so that you can see that this is shoulders. And of course the hands are going to need a lot more work. And I know these were all supposed to be quick sketches. But I really wanted to do this particular creature justice, and she's just going to take a little bit of work. Yeah, I had a drawing of this particular creature that I'd gotten started a while back, and I was going to, it started off in pencil, and I was going to use calligraphy to finish it out. Well, I never did, because I had all this webbing to deal with a tiny calligraphy pen, and it got overwhelming pretty quickly. But digitally, I think I can do it. I can put it on another layer and just slide it under my main figure, and it should work out. And let me blend through the arm. To make sure we have some suggestion of rounding for the limbs. I think it's important for every world to have, some dimension to it. Some things are going to be, very sweet. A representation of innocence, like the healer's horse. Although he's going to turn into a representation of chaos later in his life. Here he's pretty young. And then you're also going to have some things in the world that are horrifying. That they are right there in the they live in the uncanny valley, I guess. And you're just not gonna be particularly okay with being neighbors with them. Unless you have a pretty good grasp of how to survive an encounter. Individually, they aren't so scary, they're just a little creepy, but they live in this massive colony. Let me just trim up this right here. Got a little too blurred on the edges. Okay, I'm going to refine the hands after I get the webbing, and I know exactly where it's going to be. I'm going to show exactly where the hands will go and the position of each finger and so forth. But for now, I think we're all right. Just marking about where they are. So I think I have the light coming from the upper left this time. I just want to, leave the face pretty light. Let me try out this contouring thing again. Let's see how it goes. Whoop, not quite. This way? Almost. See, depending on where you use it, it does a slightly different effect. And I have not entirely figured out what it's supposed to do. Nope. I don't know exactly how this particular tool is supposed to work yet. But it does create an interesting layer to where the shading goes, and it does mean that I have to blend less. So, blend that right there, and then come back in and put the nose back in. So I'm also going to use the paint feature. I'm going to do this color right here, this orangey color. Go into paint, use the light running ink, and whoa, that was very big. Much better. And carry in the shading where in between each of these folds in the braid would be. So I'll sketch these in here. This is going to be, this right here is going to be the eye. So they have two main eyes and then 6 secondary eyes. Something interesting. I don't know if anyone's tried this, but if you go out, not in winter, but you know, at dusk in most seasons of the year, and you take a flashlight and you shine it out on the grass, you're going to see, usually in the summer or the spring, you're going to see all these tiny little specks of green shining back at you. And that's how you know where all the spiders are. And now you will never again go out at dusk and walk in the yard barefoot. I know I won't. And so it's not something else, because I have found a spider and shone a light on it, and it's definitely the same sort of light shining back. Those are definitely spider eyes. It's not grasshoppers. It's not crickets. It's spiders. There's a lot of them out there. So I have all kinds of spiders out here. Mostly I have like the giant orb weavers and those wolf spiders, I think. And that was something funny that happened. Sort of funny. I mean, we are talking about spiders here. But last year, in the summer, I found a spider in my bathroom, and that's just not going to work. We're not going to do this. We're not going to keep spiders indoors. But I did feel a little bit bad for it, so I didn't just crush it. I found something, I think it was a lid to one of these shower products or a cup that was in there. So I catch it, I take it outside, and I set it on the porch. And it just sort of huddles inside the cup. And then I go down to check the mail. When I come back up the porch, I see this poor little spider. It was kind of pretty for a spider. I mean, it was, you know, classic spider proportions, I guess. It was kind of like Charlotte from Charlotte's Web. Only more brown than gray. And it was running with its two little forelegs up in the air as if it was screaming and running away from this big fuzzy gray hunting spider. It just ran from one end of the porch to the other. So I felt bad for it, and I ended up getting a stick and flicking the hunting spider away from it so that it had a chance to get away. But like, I could imagine it. It looked like it was running, screaming. Yeah, well, I would run screaming from a spider like that too if it was proportionately that much bigger than me as that hunting spider was to my little house spider that wasn't equipped to live outdoors. Yeah, it was funny. I thought it was almost like a little domesticated spider. Except I'm not keeping them in my house. They can live outdoors all they like. But it was very useful. I looked at it very carefully before I caught it and put it outside to make note of what the proportions should be for my arachne. You know, I don't know if they have individual names in this story, or if they all just live in a collective. You know how creepy it is when somebody refers to themselves as we. That kind of sounds reasonable for what they'll do. Yeah, that's probably right. And they also communicate via this complex system of plucking on the webs. And if everyone's talking at the same time, you can actually hear it very, very softly. And there's the autosave. Thank you, autosave. So, honestly, I feel like if it was entirely up to me, I would not be including these creatures in my world. But it's like they need to be there. They belong. They belong every bit as much as the more cutesy and normal fairies. And yeah, they're a legitimate part of the other realm. And I'm gonna do my best to represent them faithfully. To what I believe that they'd be like. I really can't have the story without them. Let's see, this arm needs to be a little thicker through here. And here's the forearm. Needs to be this shape. Yeah, the other reason that I'm not entirely thrilled about them, but they do belong, so they're going to be in. Not only are they kind of creepy, but oh, that's not good. Also, all of these arms and hands. This is going to be such a pain. I mean, I'm not the one doing the art for the comic. Mia is. But it's not going to be easy. So I'm going to do my best to not have these, to not have too much up close featured of one of them at a time. Because I can imagine all these arms, all these hands, all the gesture, because every arm, every wrist, every finger is just loaded with gesture, and they've each got 8. Yeah. They're going to be so much work. I'm sorry. But they belong here. Okay. Right here, she's going to have a hand, and this one might be gripping something behind here. So you might not have to show every hand every time, but depending on what pose they're in, you're going to have to show a lot of them. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out. I also need to shake out my wrist a bit. Okay. Yeah, the scroll wheel is not doing the thing that I want it to do. See? It says... Alright, where are we? Fit to screen, there it is. Okay, so this is going to leave a lot of room above it to do a little bit of text about what they are, and also maybe on this side, on the upper right, just show a few of them in the background as like little specks. Come over here. No jumping. And they're going to be very light. Very light colored. Do some watercolor. Because this base right here is just going to be very soft. So mostly what these are going to look like from a distance is white. So I'm not going to color them in very dark. And of course the webbing is going to be very, very white. So their whole forest is going to be just covered in white webs. And there's going to be a lot of bones on the floor of it, of various small creatures. You know, it might be the only forest in existence that's not going to have squirrels in it. Yeah, I just don't think squirrels would last very long. Yeah, they're all very nice girls. They're just a bit voracious. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit more. So this is going to be more like thistledown. But yeah, there's a great scene. I can't wait to get to it. Where Becca and Torin have to pass through this forest, and they're not really prepared. And it's terrifying because it's kind of a bad way to go. Like, there's at that point in the story, they faced all sorts of things to get this far, but this is still pretty horrifying because, man, nobody wants to go out like this. Spiders are kind of the worst. Although they do consider themselves to be a very humane people. They put you under. You don't feel a thing. Of course, until they do, you gotta think about what's gonna happen to you, and that's pretty horrifying. So, as always, it's very important to understand the culture of the people that you are attempting to pass through their territory. And the Arachne are no exception. Okay, and that bit's about done. The hands are going to need a lot of work, And the face is going to need some more shading through here. So, but yeah, a very soft, innocent, blank expression. They're very earnest about what they do. And get some shading in here. So I am running a little bit later tonight. I did get a later start. That's what happens. You set stuff down to thaw in the refrigerator and it's still frozen solid when you go to check on it. So I had to come up with one of my contingency plan meals. And it took a little while to put together, but we're good. And I'd say not go too dark under the eye, but she does need to have some roundness in the face. So I think I'm going to zoom in on it a little more and blend so that you see it looks a little streaky, and then when you have the streaks, then it translates to age when you have too many lines. And that's not what I want for this piece. So then what you do to correct that is you just blend it out. Now I've noticed something, that when a lot of people, when they try to draw babies, because babies are cute and they're a great subject, a lot of people, you end up with something that looks like a very small old man. Because babies, you know, they have all this dimension to their face. It's round, and so you try and, you know, put in a line to denote how round the face is, because it's got to have some features in there. How are you going to do it without putting some sort of a line? And then if you have, yeah, there's the round cheeks, and then there's the nose, and that's got to be put in. You know, again, somehow you got to do something. And that's another line, and then, you know, you just keep adding lines, and pretty soon you look at it and you're like, well, I tried to reproduce everything about the baby's face faithfully. Why does it just look like a very, oh, there goes autosave, a very old person now instead of the baby that I was trying to reproduce so faithfully? And what it is, it's lines. Lines, they just translate into age. There's no help for it. You can't use lines. So wherever you get your detail from, it can't be from lines. You can use mass. You can use lines that go like cross hatching, hatching and crosshatch lines, or you can do a completely different media that's not like a pen. Like, it's really hard to draw a baby in ballpoint pen. But, you know, most people just use what they have at hand. And, you know, sometimes you can't use just any media to do any subject. So what you're trying to reproduce when you're drawing something that's meant to be young, you avoid lines as much as possible and draw in mass, draw in these shapes of the shadows, and you just gently blend the edges of them. So that's really one of the biggest problems that people have when they start drawing, is that they attempt to either draw with a brush, or they think that everything can be represented in lines. And yes, it can if you know how to do cross-hatching. But the first thing that you need to know how to do is not how to put marks on paper, but how to perceive what marks you need to be putting, because your brain will play tricks on you, and you'll have shortcuts that seem natural to you that will be your first impulse, and you just can't do it. It's not going to look right if you go with what your first impulse is. You're going to be back in first grade drawing stick figures and rainbows, and it's cute, but it doesn't help you represent things realistically. And it's just because those are things that your brain developed as shorthand for the things that you see around you, and you have to learn to read the world in longhand again. I'm going to put some shininess in each of these braids. It makes a lot of sense that a civilization of spider ladies would be very good at braiding and at all sorts of weaving and fabric craft. So, come across this a bit more. So this is a lot of stuff that's not actually going to be in the comic. This is backstory. This is stuff that I know, but the reader doesn't have to know. It's not like central to the plot, but it's there. It exists. And yeah, it's getting pretty late. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon. But I think I can push and do just a little bit more here. So she's got a little texture in her hair. And I can lighten up the eyebrows. Right in there. And I don't know if I'm going to leave them this flat. I'm going to do some light shading in them because they are going to be a little bit rounded right here. Not pleased with this particular color. Let's go back in here. I'm going to have to get in even closer. Because if you leave the whites of the eyes completely white, then they're going to look too flat. They're going to look like doll eyes. Or painted on, essentially. Which they are, but what you're trying to do is not look like you're just painting. You're trying to do a representation of something that's three-dimensional. So you do need to treat the eyes as a sphere, which means shading them slightly. Now, if you're going to be super realistic, you can put in all the little blood vessels, but nobody usually looks that closely at eyes, at least not on somebody else. So it's probably not advisable to do all the little blood vessels because that's going to look very unnatural to anybody who's looking into someone's eyes that's not themselves. Because you're only ever really used to seeing your own. If you see someone else's, that means that you're either within an inch of their face or they've become more prominent for some reason, like they're sick or they're tired, and that's a little disturbing. Okay, right there. But I can put a little bit of a pinky red color in the corners of the eyes because a trace of that's pretty normal. And it does differentiate the corner of the eye from the surrounding skin. Let's see, I can go back in with the graphic pen. Hang on. Right here. And take a darker color. Come on, is it going to pick it up? There it is. And do the lashes. So normally there would be some highlighting to the eyes. So I might come back in just a little second or two and put a couple of dots of light. Yeah, I needed to refine this design from the super realistic look. Okay, now I've done so well on the eyelashes on this side. Now I've got to reproduce this effect on the other. Wish me luck. Or else she's going to have like an eyelash turn the wrong way and get in her eyes. which happens to me all the time. Nope, nope. That's too straight. Let's see. This is one of those things where it would probably be helpful to have the kind of drawing tablet that I could look at directly as I draw, instead of concentrating on the screen and trying to remember to make my hand do the thing. Okay. And just a few tiny ones here. So usually your bottom lashes are more sparse. And let's put a nice rosy color on her lips. Remember, the upper lip is always going to be darker than the lower lip, and a little bit longer. Let's do that in oil paint instead. Okay, that's a little easier to see. So, second place on my poll was the basilisks, and they don't appear so much. They don't actually appear in this book, but there is a guild of assassins that take their name from the basilisks, and there's a, hang on, let me get this in here. They take their name from the basilisk, and the symbol of their guild is the eye of the basilisk. Which they wear as a pin on their cloaks. And so one of the things that I have for Comic Cons is I cast and assemble basilisk eye pins. So that's from this guild of assassins that are in my story. So they look pretty cool. It's a kind of a lizard eye, and I have them, let's see, I cast the clear domes, and then I paint on the backs of them for the eyes, and then I set them in a cast resin backing. With a pin back on them. So it's a little more complex than the standard pin back button that you get at a Comic Con. Thank you, autosave. Let's get the shading on this little fang in here. Yeah, one of the other things that's difficult to do, along with drawing a face so that it looks young, by avoiding by avoiding doing lines and using mass instead to communicate the shape, and also the thing with the eyes looking too flat and you actually have to shade the whites of the eyes a slight bit. You do the same thing with the teeth. You have to shade the teeth ever so slightly. And you can't do it in lines, so you have to remember both those aspects. You have to use mass to shade in teeth, and they do need just very light shading. Now here you can see I've started off with line, but I'm going to blend it. It's going to be very soft on the edges. I think she's going to have a little gap right there. I'll come in here and just blend it out so that it's not going to be a harsh line. It's going to be a shadow here, and it's just going to be darker down the middle of it. So it's none of it is lines. Okay, you have lines in the teeth, then you, well, everybody's tried that experiment. We all know what it looks like. It looks like lines in the teeth. It's just not right. And back up here to the graphics pen, and white and just a dot for the eyes. Or a few dots. And each of these gets a dot. And so it's, come on, back up, back up. All right. I need to work on the waistline a little bit right here. So I really think that, see, this is the top of the shoulder here. Whoa. Why is it that dark? Let's try this one. Okay, so this is the top of the shoulder right here. Then there's going to be the waist, and it's going to curve out this way. Might as well blend that by hand then. And it's going to be a little lighter on this side. And blend that in. I don't know, it's going to be a pretty subtle effect. And since I've done blending on the rest of the fingers and the rest of the hands, I might as well blend that one in a little more as well. So you can get an idea about how they kind of get around. And what their personalities are like. They are rather odd. But yeah, this is an arachne. Or one of them. And let's see, do I need to go ahead and at least sketch in about where some of the web would be? It is getting a little late. Okay, but if I go with darker brown, blue, the indigo blue, indigo bluish gray, and this one. Okay, so we're going to cast the web from, let's see, going to cast it from here. Don't worry, it's a layer. I can always take this one, move it below here. Now I do have this little transparent right here, so I will come back in and erase that. But for now, I just want to see, let's get that in there. I just want to look at the web itself right now and where it is in relation. Let's undo that one. Down a little further on it. So back when I was working on the cemetery and I was laying out where the headstones were going to be, I had to lay out the lay of the land pretty much. And work out where the headstones would be. Okay, let's see. I think that's supposed to go the opposite of that way, actually. So I had to lay out exactly where the headstones were going to be in relation to the land that they were on. Because they're flat headstones and they follow the shape of the hill, or the hills. And that's where laying everything out as a grid comes in handy. Well, the same thing comes in handy when you're working on something complex and yet orderly, like a spider web. Now, I don't have to do these going through here. But I do kind of want to know where they would be. And they're going to have your main support lines, and then they're going to have their connecting lines, and they're going to be in a certain, nope, not that way, not like that. There's going to be a certain regularity of the interval and the order that they are. So you can't just draw the lines going across this way and then draw the lines going across this way. It's not a perfect grid. It's got weight on each of these lines. So they're going to be dipped down, which means that each of these that connects them, our guy lines here, each of these is going to curve in toward it. And they connect with each other, so where they curve depends on where the other ones are. Now, I admit I have some practice with drawing spider webbing, because when I do face painting, guess who's super popular? So I do a lot of Spider-Man face paint. And this is pretty much how it's done. You do your... Nope. We'll do this the other way. It did start off looking like it was going to work, but it's not going to work like that, carrying all the way down. So yeah, I do a lot of Spider-Man. This is how the Spider-Man webbing works. There's a curve in each of the connecting ones. And I know that there are like real terms for each of these. Like there's a word for this line, there's a word for this one. I know there is. I know the word. It's just not coming to me right now. I will have to refresh my memory on it. But yeah, my knowledge of spiders and webs is rather basic, but it's enough to get me by, yeah, reasonably, plausibly. And you know, I live in the country. There's a lot out here. Yeah, one of the things that I'm not at all looking forward to is in the fall. I know it's a little early to be worried about the fall already. Yeah, it's barely spring. Okay. For some reason, it's getting kind of difficult to line up properly on this corner. So let me scroll this up and give myself a bit more room on my tablet. Scoot things around a little. But yeah, one of the things I'm not exactly looking forward to is in the fall, without fail, there's a spider that will start casting a web across the pathway from the porch to the chicken coop. And I have to put the chickens up every night because there's also foxes and things out here. I have to shut them in the coop. I have to walk that path at night because the chickens don't go to bed until it's practically dark. If I try and put them to bed early, I'm stuck chasing chickens all over the yard. But they'll put themselves to bed if it's starting to get dark out. Well, that means I have to deal with really giant spiders. They're some kind of orb weaving spider, and they're brown. They're very round, and they're truly impressive creatures. Let's put it that way. They can cast webs up in the treetops, so I don't understand why they have to cast them down so close to where I have to be. But I've seen them almost 100 feet in the air. You know, on the very tops of the oaks. And there's something about the legs is they're just kind of mercilessly creepy. So, I mean, I really don't like them. I really don't like running into the webs, because I never run into like the base of the web. I run into the anchors. They're anchor lines, because the web itself is way up near the roof of the house. That still doesn't help me, because once you run into any part of a spider web, you are left wondering if there's a spider on you for the rest of the night. There's just no getting past it. And it didn't help me that my sister claimed that those were brown recluse spiders. They're not. I looked them up. That was very mean of you, Connie. Although, I don't know, maybe she does think that that's what they are. In that case, that was very mean of her husband to tell that to her. But, yeah, I don't think that they're venomous spiders. It's just, they're horrifying anyway. Okay, so now our little arachne has some context. And it could use a little more work. I think that the line is too bold. Now, one thing that I can do with this is I can take the entire layer, which is currently normal, and I can change it. Let's see, well, I could leave it normal, and I can make it more transparent. So, I can lighten it up just by moving this bar. And that will give me exactly how much of it that I want. You know, I could come in here and make it a little more glossy. Each individual strand. But I don't think that I need to. And if I do, I will be fussing at this forever again. Yeah, like I'm tempted to do anyway. So there's where we started. There's all our little bones. And here's where we are now. Let's say I can lighten up this web to 29. That looks good. And come back down to this layer. And aside from I'll touch up on the hands, I'm going to call this one done. Now go ahead and sign it before I get lost in this forever. And we will come up here and I like this font because it's really cute. Let's use Clarissa at about a 40 and go into the settings. Not going to do the open face style, I don't think. Right, so instead of open face, we'll just have a border on it. And put this about there. Fit the screen. There we have it, one of the creatures in the world of Soulbound. And I might put a few more in the background here when I come back to straighten up the hands a bit. But here she is. Thank you so much for coming and keeping me company. Thank you for watching. This is Paula. Thank you for coming to Other Realm Studio, and I will see you in the other realm. Good night.